Ejaculation is a natural, healthy, and necessary process. It's the release of accumulated energy, commanded by the brain and sustained by a sequence of intense hormonal reactions. But anything that's too intense charges a price. Every time the body ejaculates, it uses dopamine, testosterone, zinc, and magnesium, elements that sustain vigor, drive, and mood. A young body replenishes quickly, but after 30 or 40, this recovery no longer happens at the same speed. And this is the point where pleasure, when repeated without pause, starts to turn into exhaustion. Many men tell me, "Emily, I feel pleasure, but afterwards comes a strange fatigue, a sluggishness that lasts the whole day." And that's exactly the body's warning. The nervous system enters a state of forced relaxation, testosterone levels temporarily drop. And dopamine plunges. It's as if the body burned all its fuel at once. If this happens occasionally, the body bounces back. But when it becomes routine, it starts operating in a deficit, draining vital energy that should be used for focus, work, and vitality. This silent cycle is what I call accumulated sexual fatigue, a depletion that doesn't show up on lab tests but that manifests in every part of the body, in lack of energy, difficulty concentrating, and the sense that pleasure no longer brings the same well-being it used to. Pleasure should reinvigorate, not exhaust. The man who learns to recognize this limit discovers that true vigor lies in balance, not repetition. I'm Emily Collins, a urologist, and I want to show you what really happens to your body when pleasure turns into fatigue, and what you can do to restore your sexual and vital energy. But before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, because here I talk about male sexual health on a scientific basis and without taboo. And tell me in the comments, have you ever felt tired or down after ejaculating and thought it was normal? Ejaculation may look like a simple act of pleasure, but biologically, it's an extremely complex process. In a few seconds, the male body activates a chain of intense chemical and physiological reactions. The brain, the heart, the hormones, and the nervous system work together to generate one of the most powerful experiences the human body can feel. What many don't realize is that each ejaculation is also a metabolic event, and like any intense event, it consumes the body's resources. It all starts in the brain. When sexual stimulus is perceived, the nervous system releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter responsible for desire and motivation. This substance speeds up heart rate, activates muscles, and increases blood flow to the penis. During climax, there's an explosion of dopamine, adrenaline, and endorphin. This chemical cocktail creates the sensation of absolute pleasure. But right after orgasm, the body completely changes state. The brain releases prolactin, the relaxation hormone, which cuts dopamine and reduces sexual drive. This shift is necessary to prevent overstimulation, but it carries a cost, a sharp drop in mental and physical energy. The body also releases oxytocin and serotonin, which bring well-being but simultaneously cause drowsiness and a sense of emptiness. During this process, the body spends a significant amount of minerals and hormones. Semen is rich in zinc, magnesium, selenium, and proteins, all essential for testosterone production, immunity, and cellular vitality. When a man ejaculates frequently, these nutrients need to be quickly replenished. If the body doesn't have time or enough support to do this, it begins operating with deficiencies, and that's when signs of fatigue, low drive, and reduced libido appear. The nervous system is affected as well. Ejaculation releases an electrical discharge that travels through the spinal cord and pelvic muscles, requiring high neural energy consumption. When this happens too often, the system enters temporary exhaustion, generating what many call a sexual hangover, a fatigue you feel but can't explain where it comes from. When balanced, ejaculation is restorative. But when it becomes a daily routine without recovery time, it stops being pleasure and becomes drainage. And that's exactly what I want to explain now, the effect of excess, when pleasure stops nourishing and starts depleting the body. Pleasure was made to energize the body, not drain it. But when it's lived in excess, the same mechanism that once gave strength starts to rob vitality. Daily ejaculation, with no recovery time, creates a silent cycle of exhaustion that many men mistake for simple lack of drive or age catching up. In reality, it's the body trying to balance what you're retaking from it faster than it can replace. With each ejaculation, there's real hormonal expenditure. The brain releases dopamine, but soon after, to prevent overload, raises prolactin, the hormone that inhibits desire. When this cycle repeats frequently, prolactin stays elevated longer, and the higher it remains, the lower your desire, energy, and ability to focus. That's why, after a period of frequent ejaculations, many men feel apathy, lack of motivation, and even symptoms similar to mild depression. In addition, the body must constantly produce semen, a fluid rich in essential nutrients. This production requires zinc, selenium, magnesium, proteins, and metabolic energy. When a man ejaculates every day, the body spends these resources without enough time to replenish them. The result is a nutritional deficit that directly affects the endocrine system. Testosterone drops, muscle recovery slows, and overall vitality declines. The nervous system also enters a gradual collapse. Constant repetition of stimuli and discharges puts it into defense mode, dopamine receptors become less sensitive, and the brain responds less to pleasure. This creates a paradox: the more a man seeks pleasure, the less he feels it. What was once satisfaction turns into dependence on stimulus. After 30 or 40, this drain is even more intense. Metabolism is slower, cellular regeneration is lower, and hormone levels no longer stay stable for as long. Ejaculating every day at this stage is like lighting a candle at both ends. The pleasure is real, but the energy burns away too quickly. The body begins sending subtle signals: morning fatigue, irritability, less erection firmness, light sleep, and low spirits. These are the first signs of chronic sexual fatigue, a state where pleasure stops being a source of energy and becomes a burden on the organism. And this is where the brain steps in with a decisive role. Because exhaustion doesn't start in the body, it starts in the mind. And the brain is the first to suffer when pleasure is lived in excess. That's what I want to explain now: how overstimulation affects the brain, dopamine, and your mental balance. The brain is the true center of pleasure, and also the first to feel the effects of excess. When you ejaculate too often, what seems like a purely physical issue is actually a chemical collapse happening inside your mind. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter that gives you focus, energy, and motivation, is the fuel for this machine. But when it's triggered too much, the system breaks down. Dopamine works like a battery. Every time you feel pleasure, whether through sex, masturbation, or any exciting stimulus, the brain discharges some of this energy. Under normal conditions, it recovers and returns to balance. But when pleasure is repeated several times in a row, the brain loses its ability to restore itself. Dopamine receptors start to close, trying to protect themselves from overload. The result is simple and devastating: you feel less and less pleasure. This process is called dopaminergic desensitization. It's the same mechanism that occurs with any addiction: food, alcohol, gambling, screens, or sex. The brain begins to need more stimulus to feel the same effect. At first, it looks like mild apathy, a loss of interest. Over time, it becomes ongoing low mood, mental fatigue, irritability, and lack of motivation. The problem is that after 30 or 40, natural dopamine recovery is slower. Brain metabolism changes, and excess pleasure becomes a chemical deficit that the body can't compensate. A man starts living in a state of dopaminergic fatigue, without energy for work, without focus, without drive for sex, and, paradoxically, still seeking pleasure to try to fill the void. This cycle is what I call pleasure exhaustion. The brain, which once associated ejaculation with well-being, now associates it with depletion. With each climax comes the feeling of fatigue, sleepiness, mental heaviness. The pleasure that should recharge now drains. At this point, the whole body begins to react. Testosterone plummets, the nervous system slows, and physical vitality falls with it. What began in the brain spreads through the body. But the body is intelligent, it tries to warn you. It sends signs, and if you know how to listen, it's still possible to reverse this process. And that's exactly what I want to talk about now, the warnings your body gives when pleasure is turning into exhaustion. The body always warns before it collapses. It doesn't shut down suddenly, it alerts you, and in many ways. Most men have learned to ignore this. That's why many only realize something's wrong when pleasure no longer brings satisfaction, only fatigue. The body charges subtly, one day it's a weaker erection, another day it's unmotivated mood, until suddenly you find yourself without energy and without desire. That's the point where pleasure has become drainage. The first sign is persistent tiredness, that exhaustion that doesn't go away even with rest. It's a different, deep fatigue that comes from within. The body feels heavy, the mind is sluggish, and mood changes without explanation. This happens because dopamine and testosterone are low, and the brain, without fuel, starts operating in power-saving mode. The second sign is a drop in erection quality. The penis is a direct reflection of circulatory and hormonal health. When the body is depleted, blood flow decreases, nerve response slows, and firmness weakens. It's not erectile dysfunction, it's physical and chemical exhaustion. The third sign is difficulty concentrating. Excess sexual stimulus and frequent ejaculation drain dopamine, the same neurotransmitter responsible for attention and focus. A man begins to lose his ability to concentrate, procrastinates, gets irritable easily, and feels his mind doesn't perform like it used to. Another very common sign is the feeling of emptiness after pleasure. That moment which should be relaxing turns into apathy, excessive sleepiness, or even guilt. This happens because the brain doesn't have enough dopamine to sustain well-being after orgasm. And there's the most dangerous symptom of all, normalizing fatigue. A man begins to believe that living without energy is natural, that being exhausted is part of aging, and that's exactly when the body enters a silent collapse. Metabolism slows, immunity drops, and mood plunges. These signs aren't punishments, they're pleas for help. The body is showing it needs pause, balance, replenishment. The sooner you understand this, the easier it is to recover vigor and natural pleasure. And that's exactly what I want to show you now, how to restore the body's balance and regain lost energy without giving up pleasure. Recovering energy after a period of sexual exhaustion doesn't require miracle drugs, it requires awareness. The male body has an impressive ability to regenerate, but it can only do that when the rhythm is respected. When a man understands his own biological cycle, he learns that pleasure can go back to being a source of vigor, not fatigue. It all starts with a simple decision: give your body the time it needs to rebuild. The first step is to take breaks between ejaculations. The body needs 48 to 72 hours to restore dopamine, prolactin, and testosterone levels. This time is essential for the brain to regain sensitivity to pleasure and for the hormonal system to return to balance. Pausing isn't depriving yourself, it's allowing the body to breathe. The second step is to replace what was spent. Ejaculation uses valuable nutrients such as zinc, selenium, magnesium, and vitamin D, all crucial for testosterone production and proper nervous system function. Your diet should include eggs, nuts, fish, and dark leafy vegetables, which are rich sources of these minerals. Hydration is essential too, because blood is the vehicle that carries these nutrients to the penis and brain. The third step is to restore deep sleep. It's during sleep that the body produces most of its testosterone and performs cellular repair. Sleeping poorly is like preventing the body from rebuilding itself. A man who sleeps well wakes up with desire, focus, and energy, the sign that his hormonal system is working. The fourth step is to move your body. Physical exercise, especially strength training, naturally boosts testosterone and dopamine. Movement activates circulation, improves mood, and keeps the penis oxygenated, preventing future dysfunctions. And the final step is to reduce artificial stimuli. The brain needs dopaminergic silence, fewer screens, less pornography, less fast dopamine. When a man slows down external stimuli, real pleasure becomes enough again. These simple adjustments restore the body's chemical, emotional, and physical balance. And when the body goes back to working in harmony, pleasure regains the power it always had to revitalize. And that's exactly what I want to say at the end of this video, because pleasure was made to strengthen you, not destroy you. Pleasure was made to nourish the body, not exhaust it. When a man understands this, he completely changes his relationship with his own desire. The body isn't against you, it's trying to protect you. Fatigue, low spirits, loss of firmness or motivation aren't signs of weakness, they're calls for balance. The problem is that modern men live at a pace of constant stimulus, working too much, sleeping too little, eating poorly, and still forcing the body to deliver pleasure every day as if energy were infinite. But it isn't. The male body operates in cycles. Each ejaculation is a release of vital energy, and that energy needs time to be rebuilt. When you respect that time, pleasure becomes a force that feeds you. When you ignore it, it becomes a force that drains you. Over the years, this difference becomes ever clearer. The man who learns to pause, care for his body, and nourish desire in a healthy way doesn't lose potency with time, he gains endurance, focus, and vitality. True virility isn't about how many times you ejaculate, but how long you can keep your energy lit. Balanced pleasure is a source of physical and mental power. It makes you more confident, more present, and more aware. Pleasure lived without control leaves you empty, irritable, and tired. I'm Emily Collins, a urologist, and I see this every day. Men who thought they were getting old discover the problem wasn't age, it was excess. With a few rhythm adjustments, better sleep, improved nutrition, and giving the body time, pleasure returns more intense, cleaner, stronger. Pleasure isn't the villain of your energy, it's the mirror of it. When the body is in balance, pleasure recharges. When the body is in collapse, pleasure steals. The choice is yours. If you've made it this far, congratulations, it shows you want to understand your body and live pleasure consciously. Now, subscribe to the channel, because here I talk about male sexual health on a scientific basis, without taboo and in direct language you understand. Leave your like if this video made you reflect and comment below, my pleasure strengthens me. And for those who stayed until the end, the next video is already on the screen. In it I explain how to restore natural testosterone and regain sexual vigor even after years of fatigue. Click and keep going with me, because understanding your body is the first step to mastering your energy.